Welcome to Canada's podcast.
I wear a few different hats as CFO.
Whatever hat CFOs like Imran need to wear, Sage's tools and insights can make sure they fit. Sage, helping business flow.
Welcome to Canada's podcast. I'm Phil Bliss, the founder, and today we have John Chevreau. And really, we're going to have a special Findependence summer issue and talk about some of the things that John can pass on from his own business, FindependenceHub.com, to other entrepreneurs who are, like us all, striving for Findependence. So, John, before we get going on things, I think it would be really good to give it. I should say that John and I have known each other for years and are great friends and have worked together. So we have a history. So this might be a little bit more, friendly than normal. But John, why don't you kind of give everyone, 3-4 minutes of who John Chevreau is and Findependence stuff.
Okay, well, we're sitting in the back house of a house that was paid for with the mortgage was paid for, at least the predecessor, working for you at the trade and marketing
right.
way back at the dawn of time in the 80s in technology. I sort of moved as a beat journalistically from basically writing about technology for the Globe and Mail to writing about money for the Financial Post. So I've always been kind of specialized. So we've thrown out this word Findependence to those very few people in the world who don't know what it means. It's simply a contraction of financial independence. So Findependence, financial independence, same thing. Hopefully I coined the term. And so I wrote a financial novel called FindependentDay.com. And that's basically just the day you can say, hey, I've arrived. I'm no longer working because I must, financially speaking. I'm working because I choose to be engaged in the world. I want to give back. I need structure, routine in my day. But it's not just to pay the mortgage. Because the mortgage, as the book says, the foundation of financial independence is a paid for home. And you'll be relieved that this lovely home here is paid for.
Including the waterfall you hear in the background.
Well, the waterfall was tax efficient. That was the year of the 2008. I think the government gave us a little financial incentive, a tax credit, the home renovation tax credit. So you'll be glad to know that this was a tax efficient addition to the house.
So, John, explain about Findependence Hub, because contrary to, not everybody knows about it. So when do you do that?
Yeah, it's probably not quite as well known as the Globe and Mail or the Wall Street Journal, but it's, we've been going since 2014. And at the time, I was the editor-in-chief at MoneySense Magazine, where I still write a column on retired money once a month, but I still edit some of their stock market stuff. But when I left full-time, I sort of declared my Findependence Day at that time. I think I was 59 or 60 years old, and there was a bit of an incentive to keep me going for a year or two without having to have any discernible means of support. So I thought, well, I like doing this stuff, so I'm going to launch the Financial Independence Hub, which was basically a spin-off of the financial novel Findependence Day, originally published in Canada in 2008 and in the United States edition in 2012 or thereabouts. So having been a newspaper guy, my motto was always a story a day keeps the editor away. As long as you give the Globe and Mail editors a story every day, they don't bother you. So, Joe, what are you doing today? What are you covering? You're covering this. So I set out from the get-go to write a blog or have a blog written for me every business day, 52 weeks a year from 2014 on, which I more or less have kept to, knock off Saturday, Sunday. Lately, I've been experimenting as I even get super Findependent, I guess you would call it, with just doing, at least in the summer, 4-day week. So I don't always publish on Wednesday right now, just to give myself a break. So either I write these blogs or I have what's called guest blogs. We have advertisers, right now, for example, BMO, Harvest ETFs, Franklin Templeton are the advertisers. So for that, they get a monthly sponsor blog, which is clearly identified as sponsored content. Everyone knows what it is. We don't false advertising. So essentially, it's all about, I would say, it's targeted people who are 10 or 20 years from what we used to call retirement, what I call independent, or people already in semi-retirement. I mean, you could argue you and I, Phil, in our 70s, I was going to say 60, are independent, but we're, there's a difference between retirement and independence.
Well, I think there's a difference in retirement and independence. Independence doesn't necessarily mean that you're retired. It means that, surviving, fiscally surviving,
Yeah,
is done.
Yeah, you can be independent, but not retired. But you can't be the other way around. You can't be retired, but not independent. I can't imagine. I know there's some people try to be retired without being independent. That doesn't work. By definition, if you're not independent, your expenses exceed your income. That way lies madness.
Just to give people an idea, John, in the time you've been writing about financial matters, but let's say since the Findependence have got going, I mean, what's been the major feedback? What are people looking for?
Well, I think we can call the term whatever you want. You can call it a personal finance site, money, financial freedom. You look at the Globe and Mail or some of the mass publications, they seem to be obsessed with the term retirement. It's just an easy shorthand way.
Mm-hmm.
So the distinction between financial independence and retirement sort of rolls off some of these people. But it doesn't really matter. So people basically, when I say independent, what people really mean by it is they don't want to work as a salaried employee with a boss, with the meetings. Before the pandemic, you had to commute like an hour a day to get to some office, and by 8 o'clock in the morning on 9 o'clock or whatever on Monday, and going till Friday. And of course, as a salaried employee, you're getting taxed rather heavily, as we are on interesting, same thing, top dollar. So I think people think that they want to retire fast. But in most cases, there's a lot of financial blogs. I mean, independent stuff has lots of competition. And most of these people tend to be former salaried employees who wanted to become, as per your site, they want to become entrepreneurs. So in that case, it might consist of being self-employed, semi-retired. They're already getting a certain amount of pension income and investment income, but maybe they're 55. They're not really ready to pack it in for another 20 years. So they build a business. And if it's about financial independence, they become authors. They write a book about it. They self-publish it. They market it. They do podcasts like this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all on their terms. They're working for themselves. They may choose to have employees. Personally, I've never had employees. I admire people who have done it, like yourself. But you could be a one-man band or a sole proprietor. And I'm a sole proprietor, but I'm also incorporated for tax reasons and limited liability.
It's interesting. So, in terms of gaining independence, is there kind of a magic series of steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, that you have to do? Like, so someone's beginning their entrepreneurial journey, with a view to gaining independence. From your side, are there sort of 4 steps, that the 3 or 4 steps that if they take, nothing's guaranteed on it, but if they take, they're going to have a much better sort of success factor.
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, of course, you've got to get to the point where you're living within your means, and that the money coming in, it's like running a business. You've got to have more money coming in than money going out, or you're going, by definition, into debt.
Mm-hmm.
Debt these days, interest rates are going higher, so all of a sudden you're not carrying it like money ain't free anymore. It's not like 0 to 2%. It's more like 5 to 8% if you have a mortgage, and maybe more on a credit card. So in Findependence Day, the book, the novel, we talk about it features a young couple, Jamie and Sheena, and they have different views on spending. Jamie is a big spender, saver, builder, like yourself, a builder who wants to build businesses. seen as more of a consumer consumption, and she's got this bad credit card habit, which she cures over right off the bat. So first stage in almost any of the financial plans that you're asking about is to eliminate all forms of debt, consumer debt, high interest debt. But then after that, if you're thinking of starting a business as an entrepreneur, you need that emergency cushion because you can't really count on billings meeting your expenses in the first year. So ideally, you put aside enough money that your personal existence, your rent or your mortgage and the food and the utilities and all that is taken care of for a year while you make the sales calls and you build the business. Having done that, once you have a little bit of surplus, you can start reinvesting it into either more assets or perhaps building a bigger cushion. As I said earlier in the book, about the book, the foundation of financial independence, in my view, is a paid-for home. Not that easy in Toronto or Vancouver these days. I feel sorry for young people who are just trying to go on to this world. Once you've got rid of the big mortgage, tends to be in your 50s or 40s or something, then it's a matter of building the nest egg to the point where you live by it's called the 4% rule, where, for example, if you have $1 million, you should be able to count on getting $40,000 a year. 4% of $1 million is 40,000 after inflation adjusted. So if you think you can live on 40,000 a year forever, or figure 100, then that's what you'd go for. And you probably achieve that through a mix of stocks and bonds and ETFs covering those asset classes.
Starting a new business is an exciting journey, but it also comes with its fair share of risks. Business insurance safeguards your hard work by protecting your assets. Without it, a substantial liability claim could put your personal finances at risk. Liability insurance also gives you a competitive edge in the market. Visit zensurance.com/save35 to get a free quote for the low-cost insurance protection you need so you can focus on your growing business.
There's one more thing that we want to cover from your side, something that you call victory lap retirement. What is that?
Well, Victory Lap Retirement is another book that I co-wrote with a chap, an ex-corporate banker, Mike Drag. I gave with the TD and RBC, all the big banks. And he had this dream of basically, he was reading the Financial Independence Hub. That's how he learned about me. And he kind of approached me one day and said, I got this idea for a book called Victory Lap Retirement. He'd never written a book, and he knew that I'd written 8 or 10 of them, but then he write it down. So I said, sure, we can. I set him up with the publisher, which is Milner Associates, set him up with the cartoonist, Steve Leach, who's like the cartoonist, by the way. And so we co-wrote this book called Victory Lap Retirement, Milner and Associates. We did a second edition, or we did a U.S. edition with a U.S. financial planner. And but essentially, Victory Lap Retirement is life after Findependence Day. So Findependence Day is covering everything. Being a young newlywed, you get married, you start to worry about mortgages and get your first job, up to when you declare your Independence Day. Let's say it's age 55 for the sake of argument. From the moment on, from 55 on, if you achieve independence, now you're in your victory. You're not retired yet. You're basically gone from employee to entrepreneur to self-employed, and maybe you're going to have a 10 or 15 year encore career. At which point, maybe at 70 or 75, you decide to be classically fully retired in the old principle. So Independence Day is getting there, and the day you get there, you begin your victory lap retirement. Unless you're a civil servant or you work for Ottawa somehow, and you have a defined benefit pension plan, in which case,
very rare today.
Yeah, but you're laughing if you can. So.
But what's your view of entrepreneurship in Canada? Let's be real about it. Entrepreneurship in our day was created by realizing you couldn't work for somebody, or somebody pulling out or closing down, and off you end up becoming an entrepreneur. I don't think it's in the same mix as it was, 25 years ago.
Well, I don't think everybody is kind of an entrepreneur, and I think, as I say, our daughter, love her though I do, I think, really, you should just go get a job with the provincial government or in Ottawa, and hang in there for 35 years, get that pension plan, and you can be free forever at 55. But other young people are notoriously entrepreneurial. the TikTok generation, and they've got all the social media skills to promote themselves. And you've had partnerships. You don't have to be a sole proprietor. You can find somebody else who's got what's the word, skills that are complementary.
Yes, that's always complementary.
As opposed to, like, you could be the salesperson, you're the creative person, whatever the mix is. You don't want to have you twice. You want somebody else. And I think in your own career you've done it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't want to duplicate things. You want someone to complement someone that's the skills you're lacking. So you wanted to ask me some questions, so we'll kind of round up this sort of finance and entrepreneurship kind of conversation. You throw a couple of things at me.
Yeah. So instead of you journalist, me source, now I'm going to be the journalist. This is my natural role, and you are going to be the source. So I get to be the boss here.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Bliss. So you claim to be an entrepreneur. Tell us about CP, Canada's podcast.
This podcast is something I had an idea of growing up in media, a bit like you, John. I saw 5 years ago that when podcasts were emerging 5 years ago, there was a lot of enthusiasm about them, but no one was taking them too seriously. And I also saw that they were a little bit, I thought, underwhelming at the time. But a lot of solopreneurs trying to be entrepreneurs, trying to be entrepreneurial podcasts and use that as a business. And some of them are succeeding, some of them are powerful. But I kind of come from the old school. I wanted a network, basically. I think if you live in a country, you can't really look after something from the front of. You want to have, used to be journalists in each city, So we really developed a national entrepreneurial network. So we have, basically from the island on one side to Atlantic, where we have hosts across the country, all of whom are entrepreneurs, and themselves interviewing entrepreneurs. We also, one of the things I found 5 years ago, everyone was interviewing tech entrepreneurs, and there was not really much going on for others. And I couldn't understand that, because entrepreneurship doesn't really matter whether you're a tech or a hairdresser or a farmer or what the heck you are. You're an entrepreneur. You're running your own shop, running your own farm. You're an entrepreneur. So I wanted to get some of those stories out, as well as the kind of the hot disruption technology kind of things that seem to be about 85% of the podcasts that I could listen to. No disrespect to other stuff, but being competitive. And that's what we've done. We really have shown Canada's economy on sort of multiple areas. I think tech's still a big piece of it, but it's certainly not the only piece of it. And we've shown Canada's economy in terms of diversity, and it's great. It's done from that. It's been a really exciting 5-year journey, and we have become the number one brand in this kind of podcast across the country, and have done really well. And it's a business channel, speaking to people that are interested in business, running their business, understanding the pitfalls from others and the lessons learned from others. And that's pretty valuable, valuable contribution.
Is what it is now, 5 years after your release of Perception, has it changed? How is it different than other podcasts?
Well, I think there's two things. One, we started audio, that was all there was. And to me, I mean, that was interesting because I loved radio always. And this was the new radio, basically, where I could choose my channel and I didn't have to listen to all the other crap. I could just listen to stuff that I wanted. And that was cool. That was a cool idea of it. And then we merged about 2 years ago, two and a bit years ago. We went video, partially because I'm a bit of a techie, and that was the time that Google was beta testing visuals first. I was used to it, so I thought, let's be the first kind of video podcast, and get number one spot, and this is all that we did. It's funnily enough, we get a lot of views, but audio still wins by quite an amount. People love to walk. You do that. I bet you'll listen to a podcast when you're walking along. My kids listen to podcasts in the car. It's just the way things are. It's that's sort of where it sits. So audio is still good. Video can be very useful in terms of seeing an exchange and getting closer to it in terms of interaction.
Yeah, I certainly found I use Spotify. My daughter gets it before that was sort of the Apple one. And you can have a phone, but it's a pretty seamless thing.
Yeah, we're on everything, so it doesn't really mean Google, Spotify, Apple, whatever. We're everywhere.
So, I mean, I was going to ask you what you like about being an entrepreneur, but presumably it's financial, right? I mean,
I like the independence of it. I like the creativity of it. You create a problem, you got to solve it yourself and get out of it. If you see an opportunity, you can be the first there and or do it better than people are doing, and that's always a fantastic challenge, and for me, that John, you've known me long enough, that's my raison d'etre. So that sort of it works for me because I am an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years.
I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you obviously, the revenue comes from somewhere. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to. What's the revenue model?
The revenue, it's a media platform. The revenue comes from media, basically, from sponsorship, from advertising, from sponsored podcasts, obviously sponsored podcasts for people that want to get their story out, and that's important, and all the marketing, additional marketing around that, from social boosting, from pushing it, and building up the audience. A lot of our stuff is organic, but if you want to be successful, then it becomes multi-channel marketing. But it's multi-channel media. We have 45,000 monthly subscriber newsletter that goes out every month. So it has something like a 20% open rate. I mean, so that's pretty substantial. So we're very lucky on.
Do you push this out on all the social media? And there's a lot of new ones like Threads for Facebook and Mastodon.
Yeah, we do. We do. We push it a lot, and then if we're working with an advertiser or a sponsor, then we will do what you do with social. Demo it and
So if you want to listen to the podcast or want to follow you on social media, maybe you're plugging today's podcast. Where do they reach you on X? I guess they call it now.
X, we'll see how that goes. I mean, our big channels are Insta, Facebook, YouTube. Obviously, YouTube is very big, and as you said, all of the major podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, etc.
You do TikTok?
We do a bit of TikTok, yeah.
But if they want to follow you personally, you have a
well, our website, columnistpodcast.com. You can see everything that I've done and do that. I would rather not be followed personally and just follow the podcast.
Well, you can follow me, John Chevreau at Twitter, John Chevreau at
well, you can do at Phil Bliss on Twitter.
All right. I'll just forward my follows over to you then. Okay. Well, last question. What do you know now that you wish you did when you first started out in business? This business or any business?
So, any business? I would say, I used to be known as a bit of an AH in terms of driving people. AH. And so on.
Oh,
I
didn't even know.
And that was obviously the wrong thing, and then I might have got a bit too passive. But you have to be driven. You have to be driven. You have to believe in it. Not stupid, because you also have to do your analysis and research. But if you do that, then it proves itself. It has to be quantifiable. You can't do it on a win. That's 9% failure. So you have to quantify it. And if it comes out, the analysis comes out positive, then you have to drive. And the faster you drive at the beginning, the better you can.
Okay, well, it sounds like another version of Findependence, and I'm glad that you're sort of well on the way to your victory lap retirement.
Yeah, well, John, I don't know if I'll ever retire, but it's been great seeing you, and thanks for coming on to this podcast. Look forward to a little bit of a partnership going on between the two properties.
All right.
Contact us at info@canadaspodcast.com.